When I'm in Charlotte, I tune into the Chocolate Box. We back, revved up. Let's go.
Good evening and welcome to another fascinating episode of the Chocolate Box Presents. I'm your host, Chocolate Drop. As usual, you're in for a fascinating program. Tonight we're going to do kind of like a follow-up to a program we taped earlier this year where we were talking about caregivers. And I'm so fortunate to have one of the guests on that particular episode to talk about what it's like to go from the caregiver role to a different role. So without further ado, welcome Myrna Cooper.
Thank you. It's always nice to sit down and chat with you, TS.
Well, you always come with so much good information, too, so I appreciate that. Since last time we talked, or at least on that program, you did share with us that your mother had transitioned. And so now you went from being a caregiver to a, what do you call it? How would you say it?
An executor.
An executor.
Executrix.
An executor. Okay, let's just start there. So your mother's passed. And you used two words. You said executor and executrix. What's the difference between the two?
It's just the male, female, whether you are
That's
male
all?
or a female. That's it.
Okay. Because sometimes people can kind of get tripped up thinking that there's more responsibility for one than the other.
They are exactly the same. I often use them interchangeably.
Okay, okay. So now I understand that your mother passed away what month? When was this?
In June.
In June.
June 21st of this year.
So how prepared were you from being a caregiver to this administrator of an estate?
Unfortunately, it wasn't my first opportunity to serve as an executor. My father died in September of 2020, so I'd had the experience. No matter what the experience, relationship you have with your loved one, they're all different, and you manage the emotions differently. So I wasn't expecting or ready to be my mother's executrix, but it's an official responsibility of which you have to go to the county and get authority to act in that behalf.
So if there had been something that your mother could have done beforehand, would that have made what you had to do later less of a challenge?
I gotta say that was a great question.
Okay. I was trying to figure out how could I phrase it, but
my mother could not have done anything else to better set me up for the distribution of her assets. Not one other thing, and maybe it was because I'm a certified investment agent.
Oh, okay.
Retired.
Okay.
So she may have been taking the cues from me. The only reason I had to get the official status from the county that she passed in to be her executor is the fact that North Carolina, my understanding is, and at present, North Carolina does not have the option of a beneficiary deed, and my mother owned real property.
Okay. Home. Okay. Land. Okay.
You got it. So in that regard, for me to take have any authority over that particular investment, I needed to have an official stamp of approval by the county to act in that manner. And the financial institutions that were in relationship with regard to that real property required it.
And that document is a beneficiary's deed, right?
So,
or is that correct?
In states where you can have a beneficiary deed, you don't need to have the authority as an executor if you're the beneficiary.
That automatically comes to you.
All you do is provide information related to your who you are.
Okay.
You prove it.
And now without that, then that's where it gets to be.
That's when. But then, you know, it gets tricky as well. If there is a financial obligation associated with that real property, the financial institution may require that you get an authorization from the county to act on the decedent's behalf. So if you look up, will my executed will avoid probate? What you will find is...
Say that question again.
If you look on Google and
ask that question.
Does my executed will avoid probate? It will tell you that it helps those that you have, your loved ones who are left behind, whoever's in charge, know your wishes. And they have a fiduciary responsibility to follow those wishes. However, depending on what the decedent owned, what assets they owned, and how they were set up with or without beneficiaries, the county, financial institutions, and others may require you to probate the will anyway. And let me explain. Executed will means I have been before a notary. First, I had it drawn up, either by myself through some guidance or with an attorney.
Okay.
Then I have to go to a notary and sign in front of that notary. That's executing it.
Okay, you said a lot. I want to kind of backtrack and go over a couple of things. You use the word probate, and you also use the word fiduciary. Okay, for our viewers who may, you know, again, sometimes people they don't want to talk about death. They don't want to talk about what may happen, and then they may find themselves in your position as being either an executor or an executrix of an estate. And they say, well, what does probate mean? What's a fiduciary? You know, what's a beneficiary deed? So kind of slow walk me and break those things down again, particularly those two, probate and fiduciary responsibilities.
So probate means that you are requesting from the county authorization to act on your decedent, your loved one's behalf. Sometimes it's simple and sometimes it's a bit more complicated, but they will give you the guidance as to what they require for you to get said authorization. Fiduciary, it's sort of like taking an oath, right? Lots of folks take an oath, and lots of folks don't take that responsibility seriously and don't follow it. So it has weight and could possibly have some personal and legal drawbacks if you don't follow your fiduciary responsibilities.
Okay. Because the person has, for whatever reason, decided they want you to do certain things on their behalf because they're no longer here.
You got it. Okay. And when they document it, you really have a fiduciary responsibility to follow if it's executed, follow their wishes, right? I say executed because sometimes folks make up wills I'll change it, I'm not sure. This person made me upset, I'm going to take them out. Once you kind of put forth the effort to execute the will, get it notarized, it kind of puts the official stamp of approval on it.
I guess, right?
And the court recognizes the executed will with more due diligence, if you would. If it's not executed, they don't want to see it, at least in the counties that I've had to engage.
And as a side note, if anyone is interested in looking at James Brown, Aretha Franklin, some other people who had issues with their will, Howard Hughes, we're going way back, you know. It's a very important document.
I love that you mentioned that. So when we think of estate planning and we think of wills, in my community, and it's small, right, because all of us have our family within the community and those we interact with, we feel like we don't have enough money for a will, or we don't have enough asset. That's for James Brown, ...
Yeah,
right?
Right?
You make it easier on your family if you do some estate planning beforehand. We've got to remove the fear that if we talk about death, we're going to die. We're going to die, whether we talk
might as
about
well
it
talk about it, huh?
or not. Well, at least that's what history has proven to us.
See, nobody's getting out of this alive, but go ahead, yeah.
Exactly. So because of my training as a certified investment agent, and I hope I didn't say planner initially, it's agent. I am not a certified financial
And you're not
planner.
an attorney, so you're not, okay.
I am not an attorney, but I have chosen to do a lot of this legwork on my own because those folks in those professions make mistakes too. Do your due diligence, whether you hire someone to do this for you or whether you do it yourself. You gotta check because they can make mistakes that could cost you money down the line.
And just because they have some degrees or went to some schools,
doesn't
we're all
matter.
human, we make mistakes.
It would behoove you to get smart about this activity, this responsibility, this part of our lives.
You had mentioned about just, I guess, the weight that's required to carry out the wishes of your loved one, in your case, your mother, you know. How was it decided that you would be that one to do that versus a sibling or someone else?
Awesome question. With my father, I have a half-sister. So we were co-executrix.
That's interesting.
Yes, it was.
You have to work together, but he wanted to make sure that there was no preferential treatment or
He had nothing to do with it.
Okay.
He created a will. He drew up a will and did not get it executed. Within the will, it named me as the executrix. It was not executed. When we went to Durham County.
Again, this is North Carolina.
Yes.
But they can vary from state to state.
And county to
and
county.
to county. Right.
Because it's related to, you determine where you're going to go based on the county that your loved one died in. That's the county that wants to see you. My mother's home was in Mecklenburg County, and I'm sorry I jumped back, but she passed away in Cabarrus.
Which are just counties adjacent to each other, but
Right,
still
but
different counties.
Different counties, different rules, different requirements. I had to go to Cabarrus. It's where the decedent passed in. So with my dad, my sister and I went to the county probate office where he passed, and because we sat there together and we were his only children, it made sense. She would have either had to relinquish her responsibility in that space or not.
Or you'd have to relinquish yours.
Exactly. And I didn't think, we agreed that it was the best route to go.
So in this situation, it worked, whereas without that, it could have been contentious and could have
been contentious
like with the
at
Aretha
any
Franklin
time.
situation.
Oh, I've heard of not even Aretha Franklin. I know of folks that are currently in the court because you can't move forward with probate until you get through claims against the will satisfied first. Because someone can take you to court over what you have on paper. They can take you to court to say that you may or may not be the descendant of the deceased.
And then you've got to prove that you are either DNA, birth certificate, marriage license.
And that takes a whole lot of time.
Yeah.
So that estate can't close until all assets are distributed. You can't distribute assets until there's an agreement on who is in charge.
So going forward in terms of, and I know you say your background is in financial, you didn't say planning, but financial
In
advisors.
finance. Finance. I have 5 years experience in helping loved ones, executors, and attorneys transfer assets due to death. And it was just my voice that got me the job, believe it or not.
So what are some of the things that you see more common in people from a financial standpoint not getting their financial affairs in order? What are some things in your professional experience that you see on a regular basis that people forgot to cross the T's, dot the I's regarding what?
Not being prepared. Number one, if you have any kind of account at a bank, financial institution, credit union, you should have beneficiaries named. That avoids probate, just that account. Now, certainly if your beneficiary had passed on, we're back to probate. So have successor beneficiaries.
If this one's out, it goes here, it goes here.
There
it
you
goes
go.
here.
There you go. For example, how about when a married couple buy a car, right? Usually, that's my car. I bought that car, my name on it, it's mine. Problem with that is if I die, the car doesn't automatically transfer to my husband. If I had said on the title, me or my husband, that's what will allow it to transition
Without
to him.
having
Now, mind you, these are my experiences, and any one of these financial institutions can say, you know, you're right, but we do something just a little bit differently.
So it's not governed by the state? You said it's the financial
The
institution?
need to get authority as an executor is relatively governed by the state. But there are also other investments like bonds that might not honor a small estate affidavit. So you still have to get a full-blown executorship in order to navigate the liquidation of certain assets, certain investment types. So you said usual things that happen. People don't talk about money or where things are or what's owned where, and
if it's in a safe deposit box, if it's in
they
a little
don't
box
talk
underneath
about
the bed, you know.
They don't
with
talk about
life
it.
insurance policies, the name of all of those
Exactly. I'd say the first thing, have all of your accounts added, have a beneficiary added. Joint with rights of survivorship is always one of my favorites when it comes. Joint accounts with rights of survivorship is one of my favorites.
And explain, break that down.
So a joint account that does not have that stipulation, that means only half of it belongs to you. If I'm in that account with 3 people, only 1/3 of it belongs to you. You will have to probate for the other portions. Time.
And money, because you got to pay somebody. You got to hire an attorney to do that. Is that correct?
Well, I didn't have to hire an attorney to do what I am doing to settle my mother's estate. Nor
Well, I apologize. I meant like if there was a third party involved where you all were not in agreement, then could that person?
If you're not in agreement, that could be a problem.
Yeah.
So that's my favorite when it comes to a joint account. If it's a singly owned account, add your beneficiaries. If you have, and be specific, you know, if you have several children, like for instance, if you only have 1 child.
I was going to get to that. I didn't know if we kind of, because you are an only child, right?
I am an only child. I was named as beneficiary just by name. But what I like is it's called, oh my goodness, I just lost it. Well, it's a beneficiary. You name your children as your beneficiary. I only have 1. I only have 1. And there is a stipulation where if it doesn't go to him, it goes to his children. And if it doesn't, if he passes before me, then there's no question like, oh my goodness, he's passed. What do we do with these assets?
Yeah, so what
if he has a child, it'll go to, it's per stirpes. Thank
Say
God
that again?
for yes, it's called per stirpes. P-E-R space S-T-I-R-P-E-S.
Y'all can Google that.
Please do.
Okay.
So it is like, it would say my son's name per stirpes. So that means it goes down the family line, his family line.
Okay.
Problem is if he doesn't have children, it still stops. But it does set us up for success because it would stop right at him if something were to happen to me, and then to him before it happened to me. Annually, check your beneficiaries. Look at your investments. See how they're set up to transition after your passing. What they call that is estate planning.
Estate planning, okay.
So don't let the word scare you. You have an estate, even if you only have a small bank account and a paycheck coming from the job that you're on now, that you won't get
Or
because
Social
you
Security
passed
benefits,
away.
I guess, right?
There you go.
And again, we're talking about real estate and investment stuff. These also can be like china or jewelry or clothing.
I'm glad you mentioned that.
Sentimental things that could tear families apart, siblings apart.
It really could. So having the executed will does help there, but there's that fiduciary responsibility that always gets murky with the emotional. Mom said that that ring was mine.
And so the executrix or executor has to weigh in on who gets what if there's some
If it's allowed, because
discrepancy?
if you got a lot of siblings, they all got a key to the house.
Oh, so if they all have a key to the house and you're the executrix, then you've got to probably change the locks and make sure that nobody gets in until it's actually decide who gets what?
That's extreme.
It
You
is.
might just want to have a conversation before these folks die so that everybody isn't at everyone when you do. I won't have that issue.
Because?
I have one child.
Okay.
My mother didn't have that issue.
Because you
She
are
had-
the only child.
yeah. But for larger families and blended families, yes,
That's a whole nother discussion.
Yeah, there is a level, an additional level of complexity, but it's doable. Have a conversation. Stop being afraid about it because there will be chaos when you pass.
You know, I have
if
a
you
dear,
don't.
dear friend of mine who was the nephew of a prominent individual, and the individual passed away, and by the time she passed away, her sister passed away about 3 weeks later.
Goodness.
And the remaining sister was left the beneficiary because they were siblings, you know. And then she passed away about a year and a half later.
goodness.
So all of that ended up coming to the nephew, my friend.
Okay.
So everything we're talking about tonight, today, has kind of made me think about some of the challenges that he's had to experience as a result of some things not being done properly.
And how about the fact that if you don't share the information related to what you hold, your assets, if no one knows
That you got this
the
bank account in the
assets are
Cayman
there,
Islands?
right,
Okay.
and there's no beneficiary named,
What happens to that money?
it's called escheatment.
Escheatments.
Yes.
Okay. And that means it goes to the state.
It goes to the state.
Okay. Talk a little bit more about that. I want to add something to it. I want to talk to us about that.
I'm not a subject matter expert when
Okay.
it comes to that, but I have seen it happen, and I gasp every time. Because a lot of times these folks have family members. You're associated with maybe even a church that you can leave this real property to. You have a friend, neighbor next door that helped you out during some tough times. If you have no other family, escheatment is something that you should avoid at all costs in my mind.
And correct me if I'm incorrect, but if no one claims it, it goes to the state, and then you can contact the states and find out if you have money left in some accounts or that's out there that's been there for years. So if you're watching this program, this is our gift to you, is to go to the website and escheats. I forget how to spell it, but Google it. Escheatment.
Escheatment.
Yeah, and if your name, there may be monies out there that are due you that you don't even know that's yours. We're moving towards the conclusion of our program. I'm so glad you took time to come out to do this. So what are some final things you'd like to perhaps share with our viewers to make sure that they, you know, that they learn something from this episode?
Well, don't be afraid of estate planning. It behooves you to do such. The first step would be do some Google research. Most of you, anyone who is aligned to a financial institution, they have a list of what you should be aware of, what you should do in preparation for your
Demise, transition.
Your transition. Have conversations with your family, particularly your family unit, the immediate family. Talk about finances. Talk about where things are, what you plan, what your plans are for them. It is great to have an executed will. Consider living trusts.
Okay.
Consider the benefit that might have for you and your family. But the more you have these conversations, the more you engage subject matter experts, the better you set your family up for success for the ultimate, because it is going to happen. It's painful.
It's inevitable.
Oh my gosh. And
talk briefly about the medical component in terms of documents that, what is it, DNR, do not resuscitate, and medical power of attorney?
There's a if you're talking about being a caretaker, you need to be prepared to get a power of attorney. Durable power of attorney is the one I was most familiar with. I also got the healthcare power of attorney.
Okay.
When it came to my mom. My father was more sudden, so there was no, that was not the case. It wasn't necessary with him. And then for myself, I have the do not resuscitate order.
Okay, and that's a very important document that needs to be filed. Put some emphasis on the importance of deciding who's going to be that executor. You may have siblings, but out of all your siblings, only one you may want to designate to have that responsibility. What kind of thoughts would you, or advice would you give to someone to help them decide how to decide who they want to be their executor or executrix as it relates to their estate?
I chose the one that seemed most savvy in the family, and that has some emotional connection to to my unit, but not as much as my son. And I learned that because it was hard for me to separate emotional from the business of doing of bereavement when it came to my mother. So find somebody responsible and then have the conversation so that there's no animosity with the others to understand the why.
Because they got to see each other at the family reunion and at the wedding and all the other stuff.
So that everybody understands.
I understand your work. As we conclude, you're looking to do some things now that you've got garnered all of this experience. What's in the future for you in terms of getting your word out, getting the message out?
I got to thank you for giving me the opportunity to share my story, and hopefully it helps someone else. If anyone had taken the time to help me to understand what the impact of being a caretaker would be for the entire family, what the impact on the family for managing your loved one's estate, it would have been so helpful. But I gathered this information as I went through the process, and I'm happy to share it and hopefully to help some others. So more to come in maybe more of a formal manner.
Good. Thank you so much, Myrna Cooper, for taking time out of your schedule to appear on tonight's episode, or this episode, we don't say it's day or night, episode of the Chocolate Box Presents. Normally we like to end our program by offering our guests an opportunity to participate in a little ritual we call the eating of the chocolates. But we're without chocolates today.
No chocolates for me.
No chocolates for you? Well, this has been a great episode. My name is Chocolate Drop, encouraging you, the viewer, to tune in each week, same day, same time, for another fascinating episode of the Chocolate Box Presents. And we will see you on YouTube, which that information will be somewhere on the screen. And then you can watch archived episodes, including the episode that we did dealing with caregivers probably about 6 months ago. So we'll see you on YouTube.